What kind of personal qualities do these young executives have to have?
I think in terms of personnel skills and the way I think it's really important to be humble. So therefore you are expected to hit the numbers. And the reality of it is in any organisation, especially on the sales side, is that you've probably heard the expression, you're only as good as your next set of numbers, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you, if I miss my numbers for 2 quarters in a row, there wouldn't be a third quarter. What does the plan look like for the year down, and what are the things that I need? So you need to always have one eye on the future.
Hi, I'm Garry Crosby, Executive Coach. Welcome to Season 2 of the Business Sense podcast, where we're going to be focusing on executive leadership and management performance. Let's jump into this week's podcast. Richard, thanks for joining me this morning. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Good morning. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, this is all about executives and how they progress through their career and the sort of things that you've seen in your corporation. So before we start, let's give the viewers a bit of context.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so Richard Ford, I've had the opportunity of working for HP, Inc., as they're now called, because a few years ago they split into 2 separate organisations. But for the last 20-odd years, in a variety of roles, started as an individual contributor and worked my way into management and had numerous director roles as well. My current role is that I lead the services and solutions business for Northwest Europe, which in effect is across 3 areas. So you've got UK and I, Benelux, so Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, and then the Nordics as well.
Okay.
So, and I have full responsibility, including P&L, for our services and solutions business across that area, and a sizable organisation responsibility that goes with that. Prior to that, UK and I, sales director, print sales director, various, but I would say the focus has primarily been on the sales side of things rather than in more general management or category management and so on. In my spare time, I need to get this in as well. Apart from obviously spending time with family and so on, I'm also a board trustee director of 2 charities. One is Trailblazers, which mentors young offenders in prison through the gate and back into the community. And another one, the Caldecott Foundation, which specialises in helping children in care that have been through traumatic experiences. So hopefully that gives you something to work on.
It does. So a sizable team in HP, but also additional leadership responsibilities in these other organisations too.
Yes.
How big's the team overall for you?
For my current team's about 100 people,
Right.
and that kind of goes across 3 areas. So Pursuit, which is the organisation that kind of supports the frontline sales in engaging,
Love that
working.
word. Pursuit.
Yes. Working on an opportunity. And that really is kind of from initial kind of once sales have done their job in actually scoping out the opportunity, and yes, this is a real qualified opportunity. We're going to put some wood behind the arrow and go after this and, build out a strategy. So we build out a strategy, a plan of how we're going to go after it, the resources that we need and so on. And obviously all that has to be tracked. So that's Pursuit. I also have the customer success management team. So these are the guys that effectively, when an account is won and deployed, it's gone through from current mode of operation to future mode of operation. These guys are responsible for managing the account day to day.
Got it. Yeah.
And then last area is pre-sales technical support and consulting, which I think is pretty self-explanatory.
Sure. Yeah, good. So we're going to track, if you like, the journey of an executive, starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about a person who is imagining themselves embarking on an executive career. And one of the things that I often wonder about is what kind of, we'll come to professional attributes, but what kind of personal qualities do these young executives have to have?
Yeah, it's a good question. And if I think about it, and when we define executive, I guess it's early management, you can manage when you go from being an individual contributor into a manager and then to an executive level.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of next step up in terms of seniority. I think in terms of personnel skills and the way I think it's really important to be humble.
Right.
Because you're taking that, you're now your direct reports are managers as opposed to individual contributors. So, and in many cases, a lot of these people will be more knowledgeable, more capable in some areas, and I think you have to be respectful of that and open, and not try to. So be humble in the way you go about managing things. I would say the other key thing, and this is something that you carry with you, not only from when you're a manager but also listen more than you talk, right? Or as my grandmother used to say, you've got two ears and one mouth. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Right? So, I've found, and I've learned from talking to other executives and watching other executives' behavior, that actually what you see with good, strong leaders is that they take a lot of time to listen. And that's not just in what I would call formal situations, but informal as well. So, you could be stood waiting for a coffee and you bump into how are you?
Yeah.
How's things going? Tell me what just literally a 2-3 minute chat. Americans call it water cooler.
Yeah,
chats,
of course.
But it's so do a lot of listening and make time to listen to your manager. So I have regular one-to-ones with all my managers, and I also now and then pull in individual contributors within the organization, because I'll learn a hell of a lot from talking to those people. I would say the other key thing here is bring your authentic self. I know it's something that is a bit management kind of nowadays, authenticity, but it's, and Brené Brown talks about authenticity and vulnerability.
Yes, she does.
I think I have to be honest, I've struggled with it from early managerial career but now I'm kind of embrace it, and so I think showing vulnerability is really important, that you don't always have the answers, and actually some things you're not good at, and I think it makes people warm to you and trust you more.
Yeah.
And in terms of being authentic, again, it's the same thing, same principles. I would say the other key thing in all of this is obviously emotional intelligence. If you are going to go far in an organization, you need to demonstrate that you have high EQ. And I think, whether you've read Daniel Goleman or whatever, but I mean, most organizations now, if you want to go high within an organization, you need to demonstrate that you have a strong control of your emotional intelligence, how you manage yourself, your self-awareness is absolutely crucial, and then how you regulate and manage that going forward. So
and there's always a conflict there, I think, because the executives I coach talk about the same thing. We have this little gap between whatever it is that triggers us and how we respond, and how people use that gap is really, really important. But then there's also a story of the maverick boss like Steve Jobs, who was intimidating and fast-paced, and a different style altogether, who didn't have emotional regulation. And there's always that sense that some leaders are very good at it, and that's important for them, but others are just maverick, and it goes that way.
And look, I think and I've read Steve Jobs' biography, I've read lots of books written about him, and I've just finished I just finished reading Elon Musk's who equally genius in many aspects, but flawed certainly from an emotional. I mean, Elon Musk obviously is on the spectrum and stuff, and doesn't understand people's emotions. So there's a struggle. But Steve Jobs burnt many people, and I think in an entrepreneurial type company, especially if in the case where Steve Jobs obviously started the organ, grew the organization over time, I think that behavior is possibly a little bit more tolerated, and obviously it was back sort of in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s when that was. But I think certainly for most organizations nowadays, and if I look at HP, that kind of behavior simply not tolerated. And I think what will happen is you'll start to see people want to move away from working for that individual or complaints into HR or whatever.
So great personal qualities there. I mean, the humility I think is very, very important. If we move on to professional attributes, these are slightly different. This is about the performance level and the skills, hard and soft, that you bring. What are the most important professional attributes, do you think?
I think apart from, and I'll touch on leadership style in a minute, I think you also, my view is you get a ticket to the dance here if you do what I call the fundamental stuff. So being able to manage the business. So that is being clear on your process of management, the cadence, and being consistent in how you manage those things and being on top of the business. And that's meeting the financial or business objectives that the business is giving you. You need to manage that in a very structured way. And I talk about, for me, it's about being almost obsessive or religious about structure, rigor and discipline in terms of how you manage the business. That's something that if you do those things and you do them well and do them consistently, that effectively gets you the ticket to the dance, right? You're able to manage the business in an effective manner.
Is there any sense that is, as you get higher up in the organisation, that coming to work and doing a great job and smashing the quarterly numbers is taken for granted?
It is. Right. Absolutely. And I think, interesting. I mean, look, it's almost that you are in an executive role, you have that level of responsibility, but with that obviously comes the remuneration and most global organizations pay quite well because what comes with it is a lot of stress, a lot of expectation around the time and effort that you put into managing the business and the people that go within the organization. And it's that's acceptable. So therefore you are expected to hit the numbers. And the reality of it is in any organization, especially on the sales side, is that you've probably heard the expression, you're only as good as your next set of numbers, right? I can tell you if I miss my numbers for 2 quarters in a row, there wouldn't be a third quarter. Unless there were some mitigating circumstances, supply chain issues, or things that are getting in the way that I have no control over. And those things do happen. I mean, we went through that during the pandemic. Supply chains went absolutely, it was, and you're dealing with escalations the whole time. But back to your question, there isn't, you have to do those basics, those fundamentals. That, as I said, that gets you the ticket to the dance. And then it's the other things that kind of, set you apart from
that. I think is the most important point, because if it is expected or even taken for granted that you will perform professionally to a particular level, there must be something else that picks out the senior leaders and the ones that progress. And we would definitely will come on to that. I don't want to cut you short on the professional attributes, because what else have you got on your list?
I think the other thing for me is your leadership style, and it's something that not many people consider. I would say I'm a student, and I am still learning, as we all are.
Absolutely.
On what I call servant leadership. And there's a guy called Robert K. Greenleaf who wrote the original book on this, I think back in 1977. And there's other books that have been written. But servant leadership, and Jim Collins, interestingly, you have the book, Good to Great over there. He touches on it as well when he talks about level 5 leadership. But it's this... it's the ability to remove ego from leadership, right? And step away from what I would call an autocratic kind of traditional sense of power, and that some leaders, I'm not saying all, but some, and it's taking a step back from that and actually putting yourself in the background and becoming the servant first, right? So I took the decision to do this quite some time ago. It was a learned behaviour that I saw from other managers that I'd worked for and had the pleasure to work with, and actually taking the view that your role is your leadership style is there to remove barriers, to help your team, and to basically serve them. That's your role.
Interesting.
And it's and I think nowadays, and as I said, Jim Collins mentioned this when he talks about level 5 leadership. A level 5 leader is someone that can put ego aside and not worry about the organization, the team following him, but it's about enabling them to think about following a cause. And it's the ability to cross that chasm between level 4 and level 5, if that makes sense.
It does, and I want to pick up on the fact that, I mean, you said this a couple of times, student type mentality. I'm interested in what these executives should be learning, and we talk about that. What we encourage people to learn, how we put them onto programs where they will be encouraged to learn. What's the kind of attitude there to becoming a student of corporate leadership?
I think the first thing I'd say is certainly in HP, it's about, I'd say the organization will make leadership development part of the curriculum that's available to you to help you develop. And I think, if you do the basics early on as a manager and you deliver consistently, you show strong leadership skills, then you'll be encouraged to develop that. You'll be given access to training and development. That could be within the company itself. It could be sent off to do training. It could be leadership coaching, all manner of things. And it's down to you to obviously manage that and also to reach out and try and gain access to things that maybe you don't have visibility of. But I would say I've always taken or made a conscious effort to invest in my self-development. And that's my responsibility. Some of my managers, and I take the attitude as a leader that it is your job, your responsibility to help the people that you have within your organization to grow and become the best versions of themselves. So I push that down, but equally I take responsibility for my own self-development and trying to access as much of what is available, whether it's hard skills, soft skills. And obviously, for me, over the years, it's probably been more focusing on the soft skills, understanding how to manage emotions, regulate, and get the best out of people.
I think, there's two things there. One of them, I think, is that there's a personal attribute that is, a growth mindset. I am where I am, and but I could be better, and I'll continue to learn. So that's an interesting personal thing. And then there's this sense that the corporation is helping you by giving you opportunities. If you think about kind of top talent, high potential type programs, how does that work in HP? How do you pick people to put them on the elevator to success?
I mean, there are, and we have top talent programs at the various different levels of management within the company, and that goes all the way to the top, right? So, if you look at someone who may be in the C-suite, they've come in, and in some cases, a good example actually is if you take Enrique Lores, who is the current CEO of HP. He started life in HP as an intern. Okay, so he started as an intern. He progressed to become a full-time employee, individual contributor, and then worked in different parts of the business, promoted up to management, director, VP, senior vice president, and then obviously CEO. So he's done the full. And in each kind of step up, there are talent programs that will identify the top talent. And it comes back to the things we were talking about, Gary, which is, are you consistently delivering? Are you doing what the company is asking you to do? But are you doing that in a way that is with strong values, meeting the company values, uncompromising integrity, being seen as someone who I guess people look up to? You are a kind of an inspirational figure, someone who is kind of carrying the banner for the company well. So if you're showing and exhibiting those kind of skills, behaviors, and consistently doing it, it's not just about doing it for 1 year. You'll get labeled as top talent and then almost fast tracked into the next level and the next level. And I can tell you, there's a discussion that goes on with various senior managers they identify those people, they agree them, they get put in the program, and then they get managed through to the next level. So this is something that consistently happens at all levels within the company.
And it's great for you to call out those specific qualities that lead people to be chosen for those kind of things, because it might be invisible to some employees, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's someone who, I would say manages their time very effectively, and it's probably one of the things I should have mentioned to you earlier, but if you look at the most successful people, certainly within HP, these are people that manage their time exceptionally well. They don't waste time on things that they can't change or influence or whatever, and they tend to steer clear of people who don't bring value or insight into anything that they're doing.
I'm going to pause there and think about that as a separate sort of tangent, if I may, because time management is a crucial thing. I coach executives who complain about the amount of time that they have to spend in the role, the lack of time they have to speak to their people. What is it about ruthlessness with time, and what kind of techniques do those people use to make sure that they've got time?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I've not always been the most effective at managing this because I'm someone who likes to chat. and actually I've found over the years by spending time talking to people, whether they report directly to me or in the wider organization or whatever, you get to learn a lot more and understand more about people and what motivates them and so on. So I'm probably not as ruthless with my time as I should be. But, one thing I did do some time ago is I started reducing all of my meetings by 10 minutes.
Right.
So instead of doing half an hour, do 20 minutes or 15 minutes even. And actually what it does is it forces you to get done what you need to get done in a shorter period of time, which means you're slightly more ruthless. The negative of that is you may not get some of the periphery around the edge stuff that nuance. Exactly. But what it does then is it gives you that 5, 10, 15 minutes or whatever it is to then reflect on what's done, put those things into action, and then on to the next one. And again, I found myself, certainly during the pandemic, literally probably like many people, working back to back on Zoom or team sessions, day in, day out, and feeling absolutely, by the end of the week, you were so building time in to allow yourself to have reflection, but also that you manage the time that you have got more ruthlessly, effectively, and get done what you need to do. So those are some of the. But I would also say think very carefully about the meetings that you book, the time that you spend, and I think probably, and I'm guilty of it myself. I probably don't manage that as effectively as I should do. There are other people I know who are extremely ruthless at that, and that's why they always seem to have a lot more time.
And I've met some very interesting executives. I was coaching somebody from Michelin yesterday, and he was saying that one of the things that he's very, very careful of doing is honouring the time that he set aside for himself. So he makes a little bit of time to think about the strategic aspects of the company. Is that important? I mean, Elon Musk talks about time blocking and stuff like that. Yeah,
I'm not sure Elon Musk I would use as the example because, this is someone who sleeps at his factories and, camps out for days on it. So, but you're absolutely right. And I think having time for reflection, time to think about and spend time not just focusing on the day-to-day, the week that we're in, the quarter, or the month that we're in, but thinking about, okay, where am I in terms of my 3, 4, 5-year goals? How am I progressing against those? And spending time to do that, because I think what the best executives do is they manage the today, the now. They make sure that from an execution standpoint, you're where you need to be, and you're managing the risk that comes on the day-to-day stuff of hitting the business where you need to do. And if I think about when I was managing the UK and we're doing 300 million a quarter with a team of 250 people, the day-to-day management of that is insane. It's intense.
Yes,
but I would always make time to think about, right, where are we for next half? And what does the plan look like for the year down? And what are the things that I need? So you need to always have one eye on the future.
Yeah. Good tactic.
I would just one other thing I would say, which I missed earlier, so apologies, but creating personal time as well. as an executive or someone in a senior position, mental and physical health and well-being, and I know it's talked about a lot more, is really important. So, I'm in the gym 4 or 5 days a week, and I would say a lot of the people that I work with similarly, you've got to create personal space to look after yourself as well, and that is an important part of being successful for a long period of time.
Yeah, you need to turn up to work with good physical and mental health.
Yeah.
I want to take you back to, you talked about soft skills.
Yep.
And I'm imagining, because we've talked about the fact that hard skills performance is expected, smashing the numbers every quarter. When it comes to the soft skills, as you get into that middle executive layer and you're thinking about, I could be in the senior leadership team, what kind of soft skills are important at that point?
I think it goes back to some of the things we've already talked about. I think... So I say soft skill, but one of the things that I think is really important, apart from all, the emotional intelligence, the things that we've talked about there, those are key. But I think one of the things that really defines strong executives that will do is the ability to have difficult conversations. And I've witnessed over the years many more senior managers than me who, when it comes to dealing with confrontation or having what I call difficult conversations, really struggle. I have to say, I've never shied away from it, and actually, I'm welcome it. So it's something that typically happens when you take on a new organization, right? So part of that is obviously get to know the team, and understand how the team is performing. But when I took over the UK and I back in, when was it, May 2016, and I sales director for the UK and I across our end user business, looking at the discipline, it wasn't there. Some of the things that I talked about, rigor, discipline, process and management, being on top of your numbers, knowing where you are, a lot of that was missing. We also had a real lack of productivity. So when I was looking at what the salespeople, where they were spending their time, how they were spending their time, it became very clear to me some of these guys on 6-figure salaries are out there doing 1 or 2 appointments a week, and not acceptable. In those situations, you need to be pretty strong, and you need to lay down the law and be very clear and communicate that clarity very quick. And people who are unable to kind of get to where you want to in terms of to drive that performance, you have to manage out very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that many, as I said, I've seen many people struggle to be able to go to that place and have more those difficult conversations with low performing teams, or where there are issues.
That's a great point. It's a great point. And again, I do coach executives who struggle with that, even if it's just one-to-one type difficult conversations. The other thing that came up last week when I was coaching was somebody who had applied for a job in their organization and they'd failed to get the job.
Yeah.
And the feedback they got was, you're not well known enough in this company.
Yeah.
And so that got me thinking about, personal brand, reputation, thought leadership, things like that. How important are those kind of things to have a reputation, to be known for something good?
I mean, look, and it's one of the things I would say, and this is throughout your career, even as an individual contributor, but networking, I cannot emphasize how important it is.
Yeah.
And this is, and networking is not something you decide to kind of, well, we're going to do networking today. It is an ongoing thing that you do throughout your career. And I would say some of the jobs I've landed are because of networking, and it's because of the fact that you maintain those relationships, you invest time in regular conversations, whether it's a 15-minute coffee catch up or whatever. But, quite often, especially in large organizations, you're thinking about, okay, I'm doing this job now, but where am I going to be? Going back to what I was saying earlier, where am I going to be in 2 years' time, 3 years' time?
Yeah.
Who are the people I need to be talking to who are doing those jobs today? And who are their managers? And introducing yourself, taking the time to invest in building those networks and then managing them, keeping them, is absolutely I cannot emphasize how important that is. So that's something where you absolutely need to invest time and effort.
It's probably, I don't know, in my opinion, it probably feels like the number one soft skill, because you're not talking about superficial networking. You're talking about deepening your relationships with people, not just because they might be useful to you in the future, but because it's an important thing to have in a company, that sense of connection.
You touched on it earlier. It's about visibility, right? And when you are taking time, whether it's 10% of your working week, to reach out to people, to have one-to-ones, just catch up. How are you? Well, let me understand some of the challenges that you're having. Similarly, you can attain that through mentoring as well. And I've taken mentors at different stages of my career. The last mentor I had is currently the chief commercial officer of the company. I learned an awful lot from him. And again, mentoring is something that most organizations fully support, but be proactive in saying, I want a mentor.
Sure.
I want someone, and getting someone senior, very high up in the organization, who will give you this incredible perspective and understanding of things that probably you don't even comprehend or think about, is amazing, insightful, and very helpful. And again, it also helps grow your visibility within the organization.
Yeah, my next question was actually about coaching and mentoring, and I'd view this as two separate things. The mentoring is with someone who's well ahead of you in the organization, who gives you that crazy perspective that you possibly can't even imagine yourself. And then the coaching is a little bit more about challenging the way you do your business and the way you are as a human being. Is there a view on coaching in HP?
Yes. I think coaching... I come at that from two perspectives. One is, who do I go to when I want some coaching, and that topic typically fits under the mentoring, and or people that I've known for a long time, previous managers, leaders who are now in different parts of the organization but still very senior, who I value their opinion, and they'll give you a straight answer. And then I think about coaching within my own organization, and this is, as I say to my guys, this is about enabling people to get to the answer without telling them. So it's which I think a lot of people get confused about the difference between, learning and development and coaching.
Sure.
But it's helping people arrive at the answer, but you kind of take them there yourself. So, and for me, I think that's an important part of helping people grow.
So now we're in the middle executive layer, if you like, and we've got aspirations and ambitions to be in this very senior management layer. The triangle in the company is narrowing. The number of opportunities is reducing. What sets apart the people who make that step into the sort of senior VP, C-suite type environment?
I think we touched on it earlier. It's mentioned in Jim Collins' Good to Great. So that level 5 leadership, if you like, it's the ability to detach the ego and really focus on the greater good, the cause, the company, and inspiring people to kind of get behind that. And I would say it's also, and Jim talks about this, is this almost relentless, exhaustive kind of approach to doing the basics, the fundamentals, being, as I talked about, being almost religious about the rigor and discipline in process, and understanding your business at a level that is, wow. But it's those people that are totally committed and put the effort in and have incredible energy, incredible presence, but are humble, show humility, and are just able to kind of get people behind them to follow that cause. I think those are the ones, and there's you're talking about a handful of people here who kind of fit in that. They're not people you find everywhere.
No.
But I think if and I'm fortunate, and I've worked with people like that, and you can learn so much from them. And quite often when you're in the presence of someone like that, you just want to sit and listen.
Is there a degree of sacrifice required?
Absolutely.
It must be very difficult to be a normal human being and run a multi-billion-dollar company.
Listen, if I give the example of my CEO, I mean, this is a guy who, and I know this because I've had numerous discussions with him, and I similarly with our chief commercial officer and others, is the company becomes your life. So you're, I guess, if that's your goal and that's where you want to land, you need to be really eyes wide open in terms of what the level of commitment is that's expected.
Yeah.
You're not going to get into one of those jobs doing a 9 to 5. Let's be frank.
Yes.
And actually, especially if you're working in a large global organization like HP, that involves a lot of traveling, a lot of time being away from family.
Yep.
I know Enrique, for instance, will be first meeting 7 a.m. You know, a full day, packed agendas, meeting customer partners, running whatever. And, you know, he's doing his final, you know, Teams or Zoom at 12 o'clock at night. And then you've got all the traveling being away. So it's a massive commitment. And I think anyone that has ambitions to go to the C-suite, especially in a large global organization, has to be prepared to give that. And if you're not, then you got to ask yourself, then maybe it's not for you. I don't, you know, I will give you as the HP. And I'm sure there are other, you know, similar situations in other large global organizations. So it comes down to being really clear on what you're willing to give.
And I think certainly the people that I've coached at that sort of level have got to that point where they've said the level of sacrifice is X, and I'm very comfortable with that. I can't take the next level, and so I have to then readjust my thinking.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about strategic thinking as well, because you know, a lot of people are very focused on their particular area, whether that's a geography or a division within the company. And strategic thinking, the ability to say, I understand what the company is doing globally, I understand the pressures on the CEO, I understand the macro environment. Can you teach that, or does it just come from experience, do you think?
I think you gain a wider perspective as you go up in the organisation, because your sphere in terms of where you are and the visibility that you have becomes wider. And obviously you're exposed to more information, you get better understanding. But I think, you know, going back to I think some people have a natural aptitude for strategic thinking. I am by nature, when it comes to business, my wife would argue I'm not like this at home. I am very, very structured, and I can see the path through to achieving something and knowing how to get there. But I think, you know, you then bring on board the ability to understanding, you know, smart planning and how to build a plan, understanding from, you know, objectives, strategy, tactics, how you're going to drive a plan, you know, what the key actions are, who's going to own it, the timelines, and managing that, which I've done multiple times now. So I kind of do it without even thinking. But if I go back to when I started in management, I kind of had an inkling and a kind of a rough idea, but a lot of that comes from on-the-job learning, watching other people and learning.
So just to finish off, I'm interested now, because we've covered so many different areas. If you take yourself back to the younger Richard Ford, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself starting off as an executive in a giant corporation like HP?
I think going back to the point I made earlier, I'd probably be more ruthless in my time management.
Yeah.
I would, and part of that is thinking about where you spend time and who you spend time with. But I would say equally, I've learned a lot about a lot of people by investing the time and have a plan, you know. You know, not have when you don't have a plan, it's merely a wish. Right? So have a career plan. I have a 1-page career plan that says, you know, this is what I did in the past. These are the skills I acquired. This is what I'm doing now. These are the skills that I'm getting. This is where I want to be in the future. These are the skills I need to attain. Yeah, and where I'm going in the future. You know, a 1-pager. It doesn't. But have a plan and have a development plan that's linked to that. And make sure you manage it very effectively. I would also say take the time to enjoy. You know, you know, one of the things we didn't touch on is how important culture is. And you know, I've always believed having a team culture that's fun and energetic and is important, and it makes people want to enjoy enjoy the process of working, but working collectively as a team, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So don't lose sight of wanting to enjoy the process. Don't make it all too serious. Yeah.
Great advice, Richard. Great advice. I really appreciate your time. We've run out of time, so thank you for joining me on the Business Sense podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you.